Hello everyone and welcome to the Animezilia and to another episode of Pitching for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. This is a series in where you as the viewers are potentially the writers of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. And I am the crazy ideas guy that has to come and try and convince you all to consider my ideas for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. And today I'll be pitching for you the idea of a female protagonist within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. So, why a female protagonist? Well, there are many reasons. It would be different from what Yu-Gi-Oh! Has done before. They've never really had a real female lead as to such. And honestly, fans would like the change. They honestly would welcome it. Now, if you take a look at this chart, because I did a survey asking fans whether or not they would like to see a female protagonist next, or if they would like the male one, or if they didn't really care as such. And the results were interesting. So, as you can see here from this chart, 80% of the people would be happy with the gender twist, so swapping it over to being a female character instead of a male. Granted, 10% said they would want it to be a male, and the other 10% said they just don't mind. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because, well, you could go down this route. That's perfectly fine. That's what I'm trying to get you to do. However, if you really want to cater to all the audience, then you can make your protagonist a trap. Now, if you don't know what I mean by trap, it's basically a girl that looks like a guy or a guy that looks like a girl. And yes, these can carry a few issues, mostly with the fans because they're like, oh, I really like this character. She's really great. And then later on you find out she's a male and they're like, I regret every decision. Or they're like, I don't regret every decision. I stand by them. And if you don't know what a trap is, then maybe you might have heard of a character called Alfonso or Alfosto from the Fate franchise. Well, if you look at that character in general, he is a character that looks like a female, but is actually a guy. And honestly, that character is super popular. Within the Fate sort of fandom, I know loads of people that actually really like Alfosto as a character. And honestly, if you were to tell your design team over in Yugioh or Konami and say, look, the studios, whatever, say, look, we want a character that looks like a girl, but is actually a guy, so it caters to everyone's audience. Don't make it too obvious, but at the same time, give us a subtle hint. I'm sure your designers can come up with something far better than anything like, or even the fans. You could put it to the fans at that point. Now, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you're looking for a pure female lead. Well, that's not too bad. That's perfectly fine. Pure female leads are great. And reason number 2, it brings in a new type of audience. Now, I know everyone who watches Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't a guy or male, but if you want to target more of the female audience, then this could be a great way to achieve that. Because most people have basically, you watch Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're a kid, you're young, and you're like, wow, that's a cool guy. I want to watch this now. And then the female, they're not really that interested with a younger audience. However, make it a female, make it someone they can relate to, and boom, you've got it. Now you don't need to worry about not targeting your current audience, because if it's Yu-Gi-Oh!, they're gonna like it anyway. And like I said, if you look back at the survey, 80% of the people said they would like a female character. Therefore, it's not a big risk. Now, here is a survey result when I went and asked people within the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fandom who their favourite female characters were. Because I thought, if I'm going to give you this idea of a female protagonist, how should she be? So should she be like a Tory where she doesn't really do anything, which would be absolutely no way? Or should she be like an Akiza who is very proactive in her duels, but also carries quite a heavy emotional weight behind her? And the results were pretty interesting. So, at number 5, we have Selena. I think that's her name in English, and Serena in the subbed. Number 4, we have Rio. So we've got one character from Arc 5 and the other character from Zexal. Don't know why that took me so long. And then if you get into the top 3, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. To the top 3, we have Emma. Emma is at number 3. Number 2, we have Aoi / Blue Maiden. And then at number 1, we have Akiza. Now, what do all these 3 ladies have in common? Well, these 3 ladies all have in common they're from a maturer show. Now, when I asked the fanbase this question, it was a mixture of ages. It wasn't just old and young. Actually, that is exactly what it was. Sorry, it wasn't just older generation, but also the newer generation. Newer generation did kind of go more towards the Yuzus, the Tayas, people within the middle. However, if you want to cater to all your audience, then this could be a good way to do it. Maybe you could have a kind of maybe a Yuzu or Serena type character for the younger audience as your main protagonist. And then maybe as like a secondary, you could have like a big sister role and have one of these girls in. Sort of similar, if you know what I mean. That's just something to consider. Now, another reason would be a difference in perspective of personality and viewpoints. Now, we've seen the likes of Soulburner and Playmaker and how they handled the Lost Incident, but we never really saw any reaction from a female character. Like, how would they have reacted to those type of events? This is something that you could show the audience, because they would show something differently than what a male character would. And it would still be fresh, because even if you were to say, for example, use something pretty much like the Lost Incident again, but this time it was a female that was involved and was the main focus point, she would definitely react a lot differently than, say, Playmaker or Soulburner did. Maybe she'll go off the hinges, because we didn't see any reaction or any kind of emotion from Miyu. And she was part of the Lost Incident. Now, the psychological effect to one side. If my memory serves me correctly, the last time we had sort of like a psychological female character trying to handle all this crazy stuff that goes on within a Yu-Gi-Oh show, I think, would be the Bracelet Girls from Arc 5. And I guess, Aoi and My Valentine was also kind of a dark sort of theme around their characters. And honestly, if you were to add this to a female, it would still work. And you could do it just like you would a male protagonist, but it'll be different. Because the prospects, the views, the way they handle it, the psychological effects and the damage that it does will all be different, because male and females handle things a lot differently. And that'll be a fresh take on something that I think needs to be updated. So, if you use a male character again as a protagonist, it's just the same old thing, and you're going to run out of ideas. So this is why I would have done that. Now, my final point and my last point is somewhat interesting in terms of looking at the statistics, but it's the archetypes. For this, I asked people who they think or who they preferred, the cards and the archetype of, when comparing the male protagonists to the female that accompanied them within their show. And the results were mostly mixed. However, I'll explain my overall thoughts and why I wanted to add this to this pitch for you. So, Duel Monsters, Yugioh versus Taya. Obviously, Yugioh wins with 100%. No guarantee that Taya was going to win there. She only dueled like once in like a filler episode, I think. And, she was just kind of not great. That's the results. GX, Jaden versus Alexis. The results were Jaden wins by 85%, but still a bit more of an improvement, with Alexis getting more duels and obviously the 15%. 5Ds, Yusei versus Akiza. The results, Akiza wins by 70%. The first female to win this sort of surveying, I suppose, and by a fair amount. Akiza got 70%, Yusei only got 30%, so that's a big difference, and honestly a good step in the right direction. Now Zexal was a bit of a difficult one because Tori never duels at all, so she doesn't have an archetype, so I put Yuma versus Rio, because she's pretty much the next thing really. And the results, Yuma wins by 80%. Now again, it's a step back, but honestly, that's okay because Zexal didn't have a very good variety of female duelists to show from. So, change that, and the results will be slightly different. Arc 5, again was interesting. Yugioh versus Yuzu. The results, Yugioh wins 60%, and honestly, it was a close call for Yuzu. Considering it's a 40% vote towards Yuzu's, then that is a good step, because Yuzu didn't duel very much towards the end of the Arc 5 series. So it means that people actually thought about a deck and actually remembered it. The archetype that she played was pretty decent and people obviously liked it. And finally, Vrain's Playmaker versus Blue Maiden, and the results were Aoi wins 80%. Now, again, it's not really a surprising result. However, it's good to see that out of two shows where they're more kind of mature, like 5Ds is and like Vrain's is, the two female characters win. And these results are mixed, but this is a clever way to monitor progression throughout your franchise and what the fans are liking. This basically shows us that they like the cards that the females use, and when it comes to that, it means you'll make some more money. And obviously as a business, that's a good idea. So, if you create a female protagonist with an archetype that's similar to Arki's and is similar to Aoi's, then maybe you will bring in a lot more money that way from the fans that like them. Now again, like I said, this is a bit of a mixed list. However, it's a step in the right direction and something you can work towards. Focus on it and it'll work great. So, that's going to do it for this pitch. I hope I've managed to at least make you consider my idea of having a female protagonist as the lead for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you hit like and comment your questions and thoughts down below. Other than that, I hope you'll have an amazing day and I shall see you next time. Goodbye for now.